Okay, cool.
All right, we are live. To Anthony's confusion, we actually did go live sooner than he thought we would. Hello, everybody. How are you? My name's Alan. This is Alan's music party, and it's going to be a party. I don't know why I said that. So this is my first regular show, and joining me tonight is one of my best friends, Anthony Williams. How are you this evening, sir?
I am doing well, thank you. How are you?
I'm pretty awesome. It is very good to see you.
It
And
is great to see you.
shockingly, right before we went live, we were talking about Doctor Who, something that never happens between us.
Never ever. We don't have that in common.
We have a lot of stuff in common. We have prog rock, we have heavy metal, we have Doctor Who, we have Star Trek. What else do we have? Conventions.
Conventions, Bowie.
That's right, and glam, of course.
And glam, yes.
So we're gonna do a little talking tonight about all kinds of things. I wanted to start with a couple of news stories that came out this past week, and the first one, which I think is really, really weird and interesting, is Paul McCartney on Monday announced that he was going to be releasing a new version of his most recent solo album, McCartney 3, which just came out, a month and a half or so ago. And they're already announcing a reimagined McCartney 3 reimagined. And this is going to be, it's going to be like the whole album, either remixed or cover versions by different artists.
I like the cover version idea, but I feel like remixing it, that's something you normally wait about 5 to 10 years before doing.
But a cover version this soon after release?
I don't know. I think that's pretty cool. Like, I've just released this cool album. Here are a bunch of my friends covering the songs.
I think it's real, and it's really neat, the collection of people he's got assembled for this thing. You would expect, being a Beatle, that it would be a lot of classic people that he's known his entire life, but it's not. It's like Anderson .Paak, it's St. Vincent, it's Phoebe Bridgers, it's Josh Homme from Queens of the Stone Age, Beck.
Oh, how cool.
I know. I'm really excited. They have released one song. It's the first proper track on the album, Kiss of Venus, and it's redone by a guy called Dominic Fike, and it's really good. I was quite surprised about how much I enjoyed it. So, had you heard this news before now?
I had not.
Breaking news. But I'm really looking forward to it. This comes out April 16th, I believe it is. And I've got my buddy Ashley, who is we're going to do a review show on it after it comes out. So like the 25th or so, we're going to be doing a recap of this new album, which I'm kind of excited, looking forward to.
How cool.
And the other thing that came out this week is the announcement that Coachella has postponed its dates due to, of course, COVID. I mean, no one really thought, well, it was supposed to be April, and they pushed it back to October in hopes of, clarity or something. They have already at this point pushed it back to, I've heard two different things. I've heard April of 2022, and on one of the SiriusXM talk shows a couple of days ago, I heard October of 2022, which is insane.
I mean, I think pushing it out beyond this year is the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
I think October 2022, maybe they're just looking at the way the world's been going for the last 12 months and are saying, let's not risk it. Let's just push it out as far as we can to ensure that we can put on a really good show. I don't blame them. I am a little surprised. I would think within 14 months from now, we should be back to something closer to normality. But
keep in mind that when all this started, we thought it might be a month or two.
That's true, but we're starting to get vaccines. I mean, I had my first dose on Thursday, so
I got mine 2 days ago. So we're vax buddies.
I guess I would just hope that with that in mind, hopefully by next April, enough people will be vaccinated to hold events like Coachella.
Yeah. Well,
and we'll see.
Yeah, and Glastonbury had already announced a postponement.
Yeah.
Which is one of the biggest festivals anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a couple that haven't, and I was listening. I heard this on Sirius, and it was interesting. Leeds and Reading, those festivals have not announced any, and I don't know if they're like just waiting to, because like with Dragon Con and those kind of things that we do, it has to be a partnership between. You can't just say we're going to postpone. You have contracts with the venue, you have insurance, you have guests that you have agreed to fly in, and all this kind of stuff. And there's a lot of stuff to arrange to make that kind of announcement. So I don't know if.
And you got to wait for the insurance to say, you can cancel.
Right.
I mean, Reading and Leeds, that's long-standing. That's August. I would imagine we would probably hear something about those being postponed, maybe 2-3 months from now.
I'm sure they're waiting. I'm sure they're just holding, tight until there is a little bit more understanding of what the world's going to be like around that time.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, Glasgow tends to take a year or two off here and there anyway.
Mm-hmm.
That festival is very taxing on the property and on those fields.
Sure.
So they'll often take a year or two off to just allow nature to grow back. So for them, it's probably allowing them, once they do go back, to do 2-3 years in a row to make up for it.
Dan Leckie says, hello from Scotland.
Hello, Dan. That was terrible. I apologize.
He, when I put out a thing on Facebook seeing who would want to join me to do this show. And he messaged me and he said, I would love to do it sometime. And I thought, I know you live in Aberdeen. So I know there's a really crazy time difference between you and me. So we would have to kind of, work that out. Clearly he's okay with the time difference because here he is.
Yeah.
The McCartney covers album sounds like it will be great. And I think so too, because it's got a lot of really, really interesting talent on it. And like I said, the first track I really enjoyed. And I'm like Phoebe Bridgers has come out this past year and I really dig her. So I'm excited to hear what she does with some of them. Like I said, some of them are remixes, some of them are covers. There's a couple of tracks where it says like featuring whoever. So I don't know exactly what that means. If that's it, I don't know. So maybe she's just singing a new vocal over the existing track. I don't know, but I'm excited to hear what she does with it. All right. So a thing that has sort of happened recently that I know you and I have a very strong common interest in is Rhino Records reissuing the DIO-era Black Sabbath albums.
Yes,
which
and
you
I have
in your hand.
My vinyl copies right here of both
so
Heaven
awesome.
and Hell and the Mob Rules. I've not yet had time to actually give them a spin, unfortunately. But the
this is a short show, so good night.
But that the vinyl versions are double LPs. So the first LP is the remaster of the albums, and then the second LP is bonus tracks, which is made up of alternative versions and live versions, some of which have been released before, some of which have not.
Yeah.
I think, Alan, you and I have talked before, and we're both huge fans of the DIO-era of Sabbath. For me, I prefer it, but very excited to have my hands on these.
So tell me where you first came across. I'm guessing that the first one you heard was Heaven and Hell. Is that true? Or did you get them both at the same time, like originally?
So my Sabbath story.
Your Sabbath story. Tell it.
2001, I was starting to get into heavy metal. I had come in through initially Metallica in the late 90s with Reload, and then Iron Maiden in 2000 with Brave New World. And then 2001 was when new metal blew up, and Linkin Park, Papa Roach, Limp Bizkit, those kind of bands were huge. And like all 13, 14-year-olds, I was into that hugely angst-driven subgenre. But then on MTV, the Osbournes happened. And suddenly Ozzy absolutely blew up, and I was starting to get into internet message boards, and I found a couple of metalheads on actually the official BBC Doctor Who message board. And someone was like, "You're listening to new metal? You got to go listen to the classic stuff. You've got to know the roots. Go listen to some Black Sabbath." So I picked up Paranoid, loved it, but then someone started giving me some stick and was like, "Oh, yeah, you're a Plastic Sabbath fan. You've only heard Paranoid. Go check out this, this, and this." And so, like any new kid who's, the Osbournes is extremely popular at the time. Like any new kid, I initially only listened to Ozzy. And then someone sent me Holy Diver from Dio's solo career.
Yeah.
And I was blown away by his voice. And I kind of thought, I've been a Sabbath purist with Ozzy. I've refused to accept anyone else. I originally thought the original 8+ reunion were the only Sabbath. So I gave Heaven and Hell a try. And can I swear on this show?
Oh, yes.
And I kind of thought, holy shit. This is superior to any of the Ozzy stuff.
Right.
You know, you have Ozzy, he sings with the riff. He's got that wail, which sounds great on its own merits. But Dio comes in and you have a singer who can sing, and he's not just wailing, he's got pipes and he's singing across the riff.
Yeah.
And more than that, he's writing his own lyrics and admittedly Geezer's lyrics for Ozzy were profound, but Dio had this wonderful ability to make something very simple seem extremely profound. You listen to the lyrics of Heaven and Hell in particular, and like it's profound, but it's not complicated. And from there, I tracked down the Mob Rules. I tracked down Live Evil, and of course Dehumanizer.
Yes. Now, Rhino reissued Dehumanizer 3 or 4 years ago for that album's 25th anniversary.
Yeah.
Or 35th anniversary. I don't remember.
And that's probably the heaviest album Sabbath ever did.
Yeah. It's so good. It's very different from the first 2 Dio albums, but it's sort of a mix between the classic Sabbath sound, because they had been doing I know you're a big fan of the albums that they did with Tony Martin and
absolutely,
and I loved some of that stuff. I never got into it as deeply as I did Dio. So my Dio story, or my Sabbath story, is it's 1980 and I'm at a friend's house, and because I'm old, and so I'm at a friend's house, and I'm, he's got an older brother, and we always just kind of dig through his record collection and find stuff to listen to. And this album, Heaven and Hell, just caught my eye. And it wasn't just the album cover art. It was actually the back cover. That sort of like charcoal sketch of the band. I don't know why, but that just grabbed me. And I was like, I have to hear this album. And fell in love with it. That's the one. See,
what's it reminds me of?
What?
It's very similar to Rainbow's Long Live Rock and Roll. The cover to that, which is a nice bit of Dio continuity.
Exactly. I discovered that later on. I was not retroactively from discovering Heaven and Hell. Then I was like, this guy's blowing my mind. So I had to I had to get into the Rainbow stuff. And then I went forward to the Dio stuff, the solo stuff. And God, what a talent. What a talent. What a great lyricist, an amazing vocalist. So what is, having not heard it yet, as far as the remastering goes, I think both of those albums, and Heaven and Hell more so, really came out of the gate sounding fantastic. Yeah. They are just great sounding records.
Well, I think about Heaven and Hell in particular, and I tend to pick out Children of the Sea as something that has fantastic sonic quality. You've got Bill Ward's drumming, which is clear, it's thundering. You've got Geezer's bass. Dio's just right in the mix. And of course, it's Sabbath, so Tony Iommi is always going to be pretty far forward. But they just got it right. You know, you listen to some albums and you've got the singers being drowned out, or you don't hear the bass. Something like Metallica's "And Justice for All," you don't hear the bass at all.
Right.
Every element on Heaven and Hell sounds just right, and it feels
everything
like
is so perfectly balanced.
The stage is being shared between all four musicians perfectly.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons it's such a fantastic record.
So what are some of your highlight tracks
on Heaven and Hell, or
both
on
of them?
Both of them?
Yeah.
So from Heaven and Hell, it would be the title track, Die Young, Children of the Sea, and Neon Nights. Die Young in particular.
That's a great song. And it's interesting too, because they add a lot of elements with some of the keyboard effects and things like that they hadn't done a whole lot of with before that.
Well, they brought in Jeff Nichols, who briefly played bass before they enticed Geezer back.
Right, exactly. Who was going through all kinds of substance stuff and marital trouble and all this kind of craziness.
I mean, they all were after at the end of the Aussie era.
That's true. It's the age-old story of rock and roll.
Indeed. Long live rock and roll.
Another Rainbow reference.
I can't help it.
So, Mob Rules.
Sign of the Southern Cross and Falling Off the Edge of the World.
Oh, yeah.
So I remember, I don't know how long ago it was, 7 years ago. Remember when Felix Baumgartner did that thing where he flew up right to the edge of the atmosphere and skydove? That song for me was the soundtrack to that. And awesome. I mean, wow, that was insane. And you know, the way that starts, it starts out slow and kind of clangy with the drums, and then I don't know, 2 minutes in, you get Tony Iommi's da 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 riff coming in. Whew. That's some great stuff.
Do you think? I think that Ronnie coming in really reinvigorated Tony. You know,
100%.
Do you think that? Do you think that his writing became a little more complex? Do you think that he felt the freedom to be more complex?
I think so. I mean, when you have a vocalist who can do more than just sing with the riff, you can do more with your guitar work.
Yes.
You know, I can't imagine Ozzy singing something like Children of the Sea.
Right.
For example. And I think it 100% gave them a bit more freedom.
Which was the first song that they wrote together.
Yes, it was.
Speaking of that, I guess a week or so ago, maybe it was just this past week, did you hear, and I'm sorry I didn't share it with you, that was a stupid oversight on my part, there's been a new audio that's just come out of one of the songs that they worked on that didn't make it to the album.
Slapback.
Yes. Did you hear that?
Yeah, I did. So that was interesting because that's, you know, Jeff Nichols died about 4 years ago. Sadly, he's no longer with us. And someone, I don't know whether it's a relation of his or a friend of his, is going through his old collection of his recordings, his tapes, and so on. And there was a tape that his estate have now uploaded to YouTube. On one side was Slapback, and on the other side was that early demo recording of Heaven and Hell that I know I sent you, Alan.
Yeah.
And there was a bit of drama about this because Tony Iommi came out and spoke about Slapback and commented on how annoyed he was it had been leaked because he didn't think it was up to the quality people would expect from Sabbath. It was an early demo, etc., etc. And then Geezer comes out and talks about it and says, I think it's great it's come out in the open. I think it's really important that people see the journey that we had to get to where Heaven and Hell was.
Absolutely.
It sounds a lot like Ronnie's work with Elf.
I thought so too. I really did.
Yeah.
And I don't think, had it made it to the album, I don't think it would have fit as well. I don't think
honestly,
Go ahead.
It sounded to me like a cross between Elf and Never Say Die.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, you listen to Tony's guitar tone, and that's what you've got there.
One of the things that I'm really looking forward to on the reissue, mine are on order, haven't got them yet. On the CD, there is a full show from the Mob Rules tour.
Yeah.
Which I saw. I know.
I'm so jealous. I was -6 at that time.
Age does have its advantage.
Yeah.
Sure, I have back trouble once in a while, but I saw all the great bands when they were happening, you know?
I mean, I'm a fair bit younger than you, and I have back trouble, so, you know.
But yeah, I saw...
without the advantage of having seen those bands.
I saw AC/DC on the For Those About to Rock tour. And then a month later, I saw the Mob Rules tour, which was amazing. And somewhere in between those two, I saw Amy Grant.
Okay.
So there you, there you go.
I have a feeling you and I might, when we get to discussing albums, we might have some similar diversity in our collections.
Right. So that show, you know, it was the first time they went out, you know, they only had the Heaven and Hell stuff to pull from. And, you know, so they had to, and, you know, I remember Ronnie saying, you know, being asked, so what's going to happen, you know, when you guys tour, you know, you're going to do Ozzy material. And he's like, well, hopefully we'll just do a medley. I know. But so they go out and it's basically Heaven and Hell. And, you know, half of the show is Ozzy tunes. So Mob Rules comes around. They've got 2 really strong albums and, you know, like a selection of Ozzy tunes. I remember War Pigs and of course, Paranoid and Iron Man were there, you know.
I know on Live Evil, which was from that tour, they did Children of the Grave, which I felt Dio sang that one really well. And
I personally think that he just mows down any opposition in front of him with War Pigs.
Oh, 100%.
Oh my God. So I'm really curious. I mean, I wish I had kind of like been on the scene a little earlier and sort of like picked up Black Sabbath earlier, because I would be really interested to see what the transition was like for those people who had been hardcore Sabbath fans, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, Ronnie took a hell of a lot of guff from audiences on the first tour. You know,
well, you read interviews with him, and he talked about a lot of the time how he dealt with hostile audiences, but he just got out there, he did his thing.
Yep.
And, you know, 3 or 4 songs in, and he had the meeting out of his hand. And a lot of that was not just his voice, but he was a hugely charismatic personality. Look at the way he moved on stage from live videos.
Yeah.
Versus Ozzy, who would stand there and be like, all right, let's have a party. And Dio had, you know,
Ronnie was very theatrical.
Yeah.
He was
this kind of thing. And I mean, the way he moved.
Yeah. He was a showman without a doubt. And you can see that, especially in some of the first few solo tours that he did, especially. Did you ever see, I'm sure you have, the videos from the Killing the Dragon tour?
Yeah.
Oh, I saw that tour too. And
that's when I was getting into him and I missed it.
I saw Dio a couple of times, and that Killing the Dragon show was unbelievable. You know, it was just like Blue Oyster Cult used to have the big prop for when they played Godzilla. And it broke down most of the time, and it would like half work and then it would get stuck, and and so Dio had the same problem with his big dragon prop, but it was cool as hell to see.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
All right, so folks should, if they're interested in Black Sabbath and in these reissues, should order both of these albums from Rhino or Amazon. I just ordered both of them. I also ordered Dehumanizer because somehow I missed that they had done a reissue of that. So
I need to pick up the vinyl.
I am so excited to get because I'm really curious to hear what the sound quality is going to be like, since especially like I was saying, Heaven and Hell sounds so good to start with.
Well, also, if you're listening and you're curious, but you don't do physical media anymore, my understanding is that they are both on Spotify. I don't know about Apple Music, but if you want to go and check those out there, they're available there as well.
Right. I'm sort of making that transition from physical media to, online platforms, but there are things that I have to own physical copies of.
And I'm the same, but I've mostly moved away from CD. So I tend to use streaming as a way to get a taste. And if I decide I like something, I go old school and I buy it on vinyl.
There you go. All right. I'm sorry. Go. What did you guys say?
I was going to say, I think that segues in nicely into our next segment.
I was going to say, if you are ready, what we're going to do here is we have 5 random selections from our music collection. We're going to take turns picking one, and we're going to talk about it, what it means to us when we first got it, how we, what it means to us now, all this kind of thing. So, Anthony, if you don't mind, what is your first, and how did you do your selections?
Okay, so my selections, and I'm going to change my background here. I had, because I wanted it to be random, I figured I could do 2 things. One would be I could put something in a random number generator and assign and pick something out that way.
That's the nerdiest thing I've heard.
Yes, and I decided that might be a little too nerdy. The other thing was I had my girlfriend Colleen go down to my vinyl collection, which is downstairs, and I had her pick out 5 albums. The criteria I gave her was no more than 1 by the same band. And so she picked 5 out, which I have up here with me.
Awesome.
And she knows me, so she did choose things that she knew I was fond of, and things I have a story about.
Right.
So with that, my very first record that I have chosen, and it's probably one that's not entirely expected, is actually a pop record, which is The Family Jewels by Marina and the Diamonds.
Oh, nice.
So the story behind this one for me is, this was 2010. I was a grad student. I was doing my master's in history, and for the past, I was 22. For the past 8 years at that point, I had been heavy metal and prog rock and to hell with pop music. And a friend sent me a link to Hollywood, which was the big single from this. And I kind of thought, not for me, but I'll give it a chance, I guess. Begrudgingly. I'll give it a chance.
Yeah.
And it's very stripped down pop. It's not overproduced. The piano's very simple, and it really works because of that. Hey, Rachel.
Rachel Stewart agrees with you.
And this almost brought me back to pop music and made me realize that this genre that I'd spent 8 years rejecting and thinking this is all nonsense, it's overproduced, it's over-manufactured, the record labels are just feeding us shit, that there were some, if you'll forgive my pun, some real diamonds out there. And you just had to go and look for them. And as a result, Marina is an artist I've been and seen live on 3 separate occasions, on 3 separate tours, once in my hometown of London and twice here in Atlanta. And she's highly entertaining, very, very enjoyable to watch, very intelligent woman. Sings a lot about social issues, about self-esteem, and about what you have to give up to truly make it in the industry. And it's I think she's fascinating, and her music is always interesting, makes you think.
I remember that you had recommended this to me a year or so ago.
Mm-hmm.
And to my shame, I never listened to it. So I will, I promise.
And hopefully between Rachel and I, we've convinced you.
Rachel introduces me to so much stuff, but I do the same for her too.
So am I expected to pick a favorite track from this album? Or?
You can, certainly can.
So favorite track is a track called The Outsider.
Okay.
Which is almost about the line I keep coming back to, which has followed me a lot in my life, both from moving to the US, from the UK to the US, and doing things on my own, as well as when I've decided in the past to leave relationships. There's a line in there of, do I have more to lose than gain if I go on my own again?
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that's really resonated with me time and time again. And plus, it's hella catchy. So that's my first album. If you haven't heard it, you
Awesome.
like kind of quirky pop music, go check it out.
Awesome. Right before we started our album picks, Dan chimed in saying that he had gone through his CD collection and discarded anything that was on Spotify or Amazon Music. I have actually gone through my collection, my CD collection, and like traded off things that I don't want to keep, but I have still got hundreds of things that I simply cannot part with. Yeah. And, you know, some of that is that I may have stuff, you know, stored on a hard drive somewhere, but I have found that a license will expire and it's something might not be available on iTunes anymore. Yeah. Or a hard drive will crash and files that I've got from other places I won't have anymore. So I keep physical copies of everything that is important to me.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of my theory between the two. But I am coming around to the digital side a little more.
Not so much with music, but you look at some of the rights issues with TV shows, and the example I always give is Community. So they decided an episode of Community last summer was racially insensitive, and so they delisted it from every single streaming platform. Right. So the only ways to watch that now are to have a copy of it on DVD or to illegally download it through torrenting or something like that.
Yeah.
Now, if you own the physical version, they can't take that away from you.
Exactly. Not yet, anyway. All right. So I don't know. So all right. Here's my first pick, and I went through my CDs and I grabbed things. Didn't look at them. Don't know what I've got in my stack here. So the first one it's a band called IQ. They are a prog rock band, and I remember exactly when I discovered this album. I was, you know, I kind of go through phases on my prog rock stuff, and sometimes I'm like nothing but prog, and you know, sometimes I like poppier, you know, stuff. Anyway, but I was really trying to find. I mean, you can only listen to Genesis and Yes and Kansas and those things so many times, you know, and I was really looking for something new, and I couldn't find things that were really grabbing me. Like I discovered Symphony X, and they were okay, they were good. It just didn't really get me, you know what I mean? And I think I bemoaned the fact that I couldn't find anything that sort of reminded me of those early Peter Gabriel Genesis albums. I have listened to them hundreds of times each. I like that stuff, but you know, you can hear it only so many times. I was really wanting something else that sounded in that sort of vein, and somebody recommended this, and it's called Dark Matter. It's their 5th or 6th album. I downloaded it illegally and flipping loved it. Like, it was exactly what I was wanting. Every song on here, there's 2 big ones. And the first song is called Sacred Sound, and it's 11.5 minutes. The closing track is Harvest of Souls, and it's 25 minutes. the ones in between, the 3 songs in between that are like 4, 5, 6 minutes, but every song on here is just so incredibly well constructed. The singer is great. The drummer is, just amazing. And I fell in love with this immediately. And now I own pretty much all their stuff. So as we go through these album picks in subsequent weeks, there's every chance that another IQ will come up. So that's pick number 1. What you got for pick number 2, mister?
Well, before I go into that, where are IQ from? Are they an American band, a British band? American?
British. Mm-hmm.
Oh, British. Okay. Also, I do want to say, I think, personally, if you download something with through questionable means, it's okay if you subsequently then buy it.
Exactly.
Because then they've got that revenue. So what you did with IQ, to me, that's fine. But I'm not a lawyer, so do not take this as legal advice.
I typically do it only if it's something that I can't get anywhere else, like live tracks that haven't ever been. And if they had been commercially released, I would have bought them. And like a sample thing. But now that Spotify and, iTunes, all that stuff is out, you don't have to go the illegal route. This was, I don't know, 15, 12 something years ago before all that stuff was happening. So, you did what you had to do.
To me, the only excuse for that now is if it's something that's out of print and hard to find.
Right.
So,
exactly.
All right. My second pick is Anarachnophobia by Marillion.
Nice. Shocking that a Marillion album would come up in your list.
I mean, it's the one band where I have all of their albums on vinyl.
Yeah.
So I would say if the shelf space taken up by my vinyl collection, probably a third of it is Marillion. So this is with their second lead singer, Steve Hogarth, who after 30 odd years in the band is still being referred to as Marillion's new singer.
Of course.
Even though he has done, I think, triple the number of albums with the band than the original lead singer ever did. Maybe even 4 times. But, Marillion's new singer, Steve Hogarth. So I got into Marillion in around 2005. I was about 17 years old. And this was when I was starting to accept forms of music that were not heavy metal.
Mm-hmm.
And I got into Genesis. A good friend of mine introduced me to Genesis. He was very, very smart about it. The first Genesis song he played me was The Knife, which is a little bit metal, particularly at the end. So he picked his song well, introduced me to Genesis that way, and I was getting more and more into it. And I was like, I really like these things, but I'm not so sure on this. And he goes, have you listened to any Marillion? And at the time, Marillion had a thing where you could sign up online and they would send you a free sampler CD.
Oh, cool.
So I did that, and they sent a 3-track sampler from their Marbles album, which was the next album after Anarachnophobia.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a track on there called Drilling Holes that was very interesting musically. It's got a lot of kind of adrenaline guitar, a lot of kind of nonsensical lyrics in the style of A Day in the Life by the Beatles, and it pulled me in. And that started me on my Marillion journey. And I filled in with the Fish era, and then the later, as well as the early Hogarth era. And then I started kind of filling in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was their Anarachnophobia, again, was their album from about 2001. It's not my favorite, but it's still extremely enjoyable. My favorite track on here is a track called Between You and Me, which is a lot of fun. It's what I would call kind of party progressive rock. You could put it on at a dance party and people would love it. This is actually the band I've seen the most live. I've seen them 9 times live.
Nice. Nice.
I believe I would say that is 5 times in the UK, once in the US, and 3 times in the Netherlands.
Wow.
Because I went to their Marillion weekend in the Netherlands and saw them 3 nights running.
Oh, nice.
But when they play this song, when they play Between You and Me live, they release these giant balloons into the audience, and everyone's like bouncing these balloons around and really having a good time. It's a really, while I'd say it's not their best album, if you want to go and listen to their best album, that's an album called Brave, in my opinion. It's a really fun album where they're starting to do some interesting things. You can hear some more kind of late 90s, early 2000s influences from outside of what you would think of as traditional progressive rock. You hear a little bit of Radiohead in there. You get a little bit of that kind of Bristol trip hop influence from bands like Portishead and Massive Attack. They're playing a little bit with electronica. It's a really fun and interesting album, and one that I enjoy, even if, as I say, it's not my favorite Marillion album.
Right. So again, I'm old. And so the first Marillion thing I ever heard was, of course, being American, Kaylee. The first Marillion that I bought was, it was kind of a sampler EP that they released. And it was called Brief Encounter. It was and it had, so I got it because I thought, well, let's see what this is all about, because, I kind of liked Kaylee. So I was interested to see what the rest of it was. And so it's got 5 tracks, and side 2 is devoted to Fugazi and Script of a Jester's Tears, both of which just knocked me flat. Just absolutely loved them. So that was where and of course I am not the Marillion cat that you are. But I've got like a couple of select things, and that was where it all started for me.
Well, next time they play live in the Atlanta area, you're coming with me.
I would love to. All right. So my number 2 pick is the very first Velvet Underground. Oh, this is such a weird album. This is it's so underground that it sounds like you're standing above ground and they're playing it underground, and that's how you're hearing it. It's muddy. It's not recorded well. It's, it just sounds, the production is terrible. Lou is not a great singer. Let's just say it. Some of the songs are literally one chord throughout. It's just bizarre, but it was so different. And when it came out, it flopped, but it wasn't like it was a negative reception. It just, nobody noticed it. The few people that reviewed it said it was awful. I don't think it got airplay anywhere. But it's so massively influential. It's got some great tracks. Sunday Morning, the first was the single that was released from it that no one played. But everything for me finds its roots back to a few certain things. Everything traces back to, in some way, Doctor Who, Star Trek, Bowie, Kiss. And this is where Bowie really became Bowie. He was doing his little nonsense. The first album is just weird, and it's just not it's not really a Bowie. Bowie hadn't finished fully cooking yet. And his manager introduced him to this, and it changed everything that Bowie thought about what he wanted to do, about his approach to music. And the second song on here, I'm Waiting for the Man, Bowie added to his set list, and it was a mainstay on the Ziggy Stardust tour, but he continued to play that damn song for decades. That one, and of course the highlight of that is that on Bowie's 50th anniversary, he does a big concert at Madison Square Garden with a lot of guests, like Robert Smith is there, and the Pixies are there, and all this kind of stuff. And Lou Reed is there. And so they play this song together. And
that's
just
so cool.
Amazing. And I'm so hoping that show gets released, an official DVD release at some point from the Bowie estate. Anyway, so the very first Velvet Underground and Nico. Nico was this chick that was kind of with them, sang 3 songs on here, and it's got some absolute classics. It's got Heroin, which is just an insane song. The final track, European Sun, is this instrumental that's just noise, and it's like almost 8 minutes long, and it's just this clanging cacophony, and it's so insanely cool. So,
well, didn't didn't Lou Reed end up doing basically an entire kind of noise/drone album? Was it White? What was it called?
I don't remember.
Okay, me neither.
But he
neither.
was such an experimental dude. He didn't think in the same, like the second, this has some commercial elements to it, even though it had no commercial success. This was, I just dropped it. This was done it was all in partnership with Andy Warhol, who funded the recording and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, he sort of managed the band. And after it just bombed, they sort of kicked Warhol to the side and got a new manager who encouraged him to go a little bit more commercial. You know, so that's just a side story there. Anyway, so that's my second pick, Velvet Underground and Nico. Classic album. Sounds like dirt, but it's amazing and hugely influential. All right, pick number 3, sir.
Pick number 3. I'm going for a French band. This is a band called Ephanomère. Apparently you have to say it with a French accent. I've watched an interview with them, and they told someone off for pronouncing it wrong. The album is called Procopton. And last year, in the dark times of 2020, I got really into melodic death metal. Okay. So if you're wondering what melodic death metal is, specifically, it's got lots of those growled vocals that you would expect from death metal, but the music itself draws a lot from classical music. It's very symphonic. The guitars are very melodic, lots of solos, lots of riffs that would sound more at home on an Iron Maiden album than on a death metal album. And what I find particularly interesting about Ephanomère is they are fronted by a woman. So the guttural death screams that you hear from them are not coming from a dude like you would expect from a band like Cannibal Corpse, Cradle of Filth, Children of Bodom. It's coming from a very well put together French lady. I listened to it and the music blew me away, mostly because of the melody in the guitar lines. And one song in particular, and how I found this was they came up on my Spotify Discover Weekly playlist. There's a song called Bloodline, which I absolutely love. And despite the genre of music, the songs are extremely positive. So you haven't lived until you've heard a French woman growl, "Never be ashamed of having a kind heart." Which,
wow.
I mean, I love that message. And I was like, this is not what I would expect from this kind of music in terms of what she's singing about.
Yeah.
The front woman is not who I would expect to be fronting a band like this. And as I said, I really love the melody. So I love this album enough to go and pick it up on vinyl. What I love about it, and I don't know how well you can see this, I actually got a signed copy.
Nice.
Shipped to me from France. And yeah, so if this is the kind of thing that appeals to you in terms of music, check them out. They deserve more love, more listens. I think they are going to be as big as a band like Children of Bodom on that scene, which outside of metalheads, no one's ever heard of. But I think they're going to be a big thing on the death metal scene.
Well, it apparently does appeal to Dan because he would like to know how it is spelled.
It's AEPHANEMER. Ephanomère.
Nice. Very interesting. That's really cool. All right. Number 3 is Aerosmith live bootleg. This was their first live album. This is actually the first Aerosmith album I ever bought. And I honestly don't remember why. I literally do not remember why I bought this album. It had songs on it, you know, I don't even remember when I bought it. It was like early on, like 80, 81 or something. So it had songs on it that I recognized because, if you grow up listening to, even top 40 radio, because I started listening to top 40, 75, 76, something like that. And so things like Dream On, was a huge hit. I mean, you don't think of it now as being a top 40 single, but it was, even Stairway to Heaven was. So that had songs on it that I recognized, and for whatever reason, I bought it and really, really fell in love with it. I've seen Aerosmith a couple of times now. Once was at a stadium show. This was the first time I saw them. It was on, what was the name? Oh, not Rockin' a Hard Place. What was the album where they had the new guitar player, Jimmy Crespo, had come in, and he did like one album with them, and it was a great album. It had the single Lightning Strikes on it. Fantastic album, but it just didn't work with Aerosmith's audience, I don't think, because no one ever references it or plays it or talks about it or anything. It's kind of like the forgotten one, but good album. And I saw them on that tour. They were in a stadium show. Journey was the headliner. They were second. Sammy Hagar and somebody else. I think maybe the Babies or some shit. I don't know. But anyway, so that was the first time I saw Aerosmith, and they had an hour set. And they literally didn't stop playing between songs so they could get as many songs into their set as possible. It was amazing. It was such a great show. So that's my number 3 pick, Aerosmith Live Bootleg.
Was the album you were thinking of Draw the Line? Was that the one?
No. It was. It may have actually have been Rockin' a Hard Place.
Night in the Ruts.
Night in the Ruts was the one right before that, or was it after that? Yeah.
Okay, sometime around that time frame.
Exactly, it was. Yes.
Okay.
So that's
very
it.
Cool.
What do you got for number 4?
For number 4, I have Porcupine Tree with In Absentia.
Yes.
So
yes.
Porcupine Tree are a band I love. They are sadly no longer together. Their primary driving force went solo about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
A gentleman by the name of Stephen Wilson, who is a phenomenally talented musician and producer. He's done a lot of remixes and remasters of some classic progressive rock albums, most notably the first couple of Yes albums.
Absolutely.
As well as King Crimson's In the Court of the Crimson King.
Mm-hmm.
He recently did Roxy Music's debut album, as well as Black Sabbath's Volume 4.
Mm-hmm.
But the band he became famous with was Porcupine Tree, who started out as a joke band. He created this, when they did their first album, he created this fictional history trying to paint them as this pseudo 70s prog rock band in the vein of Pink Floyd, created this elaborate backstory and claimed the first album was a compilation album. It wasn't. He gave the band members comedy names like Sir Tarquin Underspoon. But over time, people started latching onto them, and they went from being a joke to actually being his full-time serious band and became increasingly popular. I became aware of them in the mid-2000s when I was doing my undergraduate. I had moved from metal into progressive rock, and I heard about this band who were basically doing something in between. It wasn't quite prog metal, but they were taking some elements of metal and putting them into prog rock. When I think of prog metal, I think of things like Dream Theater, who I would describe as basically fretboard wankery. You know, it's a lot of like, no, that's not interesting to me. That's not entertaining. Whereas what Porcupine Tree were doing was taking some of those heavier elements, some of those crunching riffs, but not just, hand up and down the fretboard relentlessly. It was adding new things into that kind of music. I started out with Deadwing. I then discovered Fear of a Blank Planet when that came out. And then the next one was the one that came before Deadwing, which was In Absentia.
Yes.
And I remember getting this on CD, plugging it into my laptop, because this was 2007, and that's, I was in my dorm, had my speakers hooked up to my laptop, hitting play, and Blackest Eyes crashes in, and it starts off with that crushing riff and then goes into acoustic guitar, and I'm like,
I know.
okay. And then they follow that up with Trains, which is one of the most fantastic ballads I've ever heard. It moves through different time signatures, but it's all tied together really well. And then there's that wonderful chorus, which for an incredibly romantic 19, 20-year-old Anthony, when I hear the engine pass, I'm kissing you wide, the hissing subsides, I'm in love. And I was like, oh, speak to my soul, Stephen Wilson. So yes, and when I saw Stephen Wilson play live in Atlanta at the end of 2018, from this album on his solo tour, he did The Sound of Muzak. And I didn't know he was going to do any Porcupine Tree on his solo tour, and it was beautiful.
Wow.
It was an absolute thing of wonder. I think he did that and Heart Attack in a Lay-By, also off of this record. Such a good night.
Cool.
Really, really, really great album. If you're into prog rock, if you're into metal, if you're into anything, really, there's something on this album for you. Maybe not if you're into hip hop. There's no hip hop on here.
There's no hip hop on there. It is a great album. Really solid. All right. We only have a few minutes left, so I'm going to go through mine quickly so that you have time for yours. Tears for Fears, Songs from the Big Chair.
Which Stephen Wilson recently remixed.
That's right. I had forgotten about that. This is a phenomenal album, and it's a funny thing because their first album was very pop. It was very 4.5 minute pop song, 10 of those lined up. It's most notable for Mad World, which was a good hit for them, but became really well known for that acoustic cover from the Donnie Darko album. And then they go from that to this really lush, really orchestrated, really well composed. I mean, this is just an incredible album. So that's my number 4. You go with your last one.
I'll try and make this quick. So
that's fine. You've got 3 minutes. Go.
My last one is Meliora by Ghost, and I'm wearing a Ghost t-shirt.
Very nice.
Ghost are a very theatrical hard rock / heavy metal band. They do the whole faux Satanism shtick, where their lead singer, every album they have a new lead singer. It's the same guy, just in a different mask each time, who is the latest in a line of satanic popes. They sound a lot like the heaviest points of Blue Oyster Cult. And I got turned on to them when they toured with Iron Maiden a few years back. And this was the album that was out at the time. There's a great song on there called From the Pinnacle to the Pit, which has an absolutely killer bass line, which I, as a bassist, hugely, hugely appreciate. And then the most accessible track on here is one called Square Hammer, which has a very, very catchy chorus, a lot of the kind of horror movie, not quite mellotron, but theremin sounds on it.
Okay.
Very, very fun. 100% worth checking out if you're into that kind of thing. It's 100% for fans of Blue Oyster Cult and other bands in the whole occult rock scene.
That's awesome. I know of them, but I've never heard any. So I'm going to listen to that later tonight.
I think you would enjoy them.
My last pick is Rick Emmett. He is the lead guitarist of one of my favorite bands from the 80s, Triumph. And this is his first solo album. He's a phenomenal guitar player, really good songwriter, great singer with an incredible range on his voice. And this is a good album. That's all I got to say, because we kind of are at the end of our time. So thank you so much, Anthony, for joining me. I appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed yourself.
I did a lot. Thank you for having me. If you're ever short on people, I will happily come back and talk about a different 5 albums.
Absolutely. I'll be back on next Sunday night at 8 with another fabulous guest that I don't know who it is going to be yet. I have when I put out that thing on Facebook asking who would be interested, I literally got enough responses that I could have the next 4 months booked. Ooh. So wait, one last question or comment from Dan. He says, so many great music recommendations. It's been a brilliant show. Thanks, guys. My prog rock recommendation would be the band Palace, by the way. That's another one that I know of, but haven't heard them.
I will definitely check them out. I don't even know of them, but I'll give them a try.
So I'll be back on next Sunday night, 8 o'clock. And I will also be on this Wednesday night doing a show with my band. I'm in a Heart tribute band called Heartisans. And we're doing a show Wednesday night to celebrate the 45th anniversary of the release of Heart's first album, Dreamboat Annie. So I'm excited about that. As soon as we end tonight's show, I've got to go put that show together because I've got to put video clips for each song and all this kind of stuff. So that's my task for this evening.
Good luck.
Rachel also says, this was a great show. Thank you. Thank you, Rachel. I appreciate that. All right. So, Anthony, take care. Have a nice day tomorrow. Sleep well tonight. Everybody who's watched, I appreciate you watching. And everybody, spread love. Be good to each other. Get your vaccine. And let's make the world COVID-free. Strange way to end, but let's do it. All right. So everybody take care. Have a great night. And we are